Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Canada once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, these guys are from a part of Canada that I haven't covered all that much on the channel, and the only reason for that is that until quite recently, I wasn't really coming across all that many beers from there. So fingers crossed, this is the start of that beginning to change. But the beer that we're going to look at today is from a very well established brewery, one of the bigger by volume producers in the province from what I understand, one of the pioneers I guess we have to say as well. But the beer itself is a style that I very much enjoy, one that is enjoying a little bit of a renewed popularity in recent times I would say, and this one is also meant to be a very nice example of that style too, one of their core range beers in fact. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Always nice to introduce new Canadian breweries here on Rampant Lion Reviews as well. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head over to Canada. We are going to go to the province of British Columbia in the west of the country. We're going to the southwest corner to the Vancouver-Burnaby area, but we're going to go to the east a little bit to Port Moody, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Yellow Dog Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Play Dead. It comes in at 6.8% ABV, and this one, from what I understand, is a West Coast IPA, although it's listed on Untappd as an American IPA. But yeah, like I said, one of their core range beers, really quite popular and a style that I very much enjoy. Now I will point out in this one that I actually have the can open already, and I actually filmed this introduction to the video before, but then the camera died and lost the file, so I was absolutely furious at that. It happens every so often, and it would happen with a beer with that is a little bit harder to get, of course, sod's law. But yeah, we'll crack on with this one in any case and see what it's going to have in store for us. The Play Dead 6.8% West Coast IPA from Yellow Dog Brewing in Port Moody, British Columbia, Canada. This is yet another beer that I picked up from Out of the Brew in Sheung Wan over on Hong Kong Island. They always get a few random things from Canada and Australia, so it's always good to check their fridges. And like I said, it's always cool to introduce new Canadian breweries to you here on Rampant Lion Reviews as well. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Yellow Dog Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Canadian playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to quite regularly because we do get a good selection of Canadian beers here in Hong Kong, which I'm very happy about, of course. Long may that continue, but do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah. If you're interested in Canadian beer in particular, do make sure you check out my Canadian beer tubing colleagues, the likes of Lee Russell, who is one of the OG original generation beer tubers, and then there's the newer guys like Redbeard, Off the 10th and things like that. All of those guys are doing some really nice videos and talking about their local craft beer, which is very interesting. And I contribute to the Canadian beer scene whenever I can because I'm quite curious about it. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Yellow Dog Brewing Company for the first time then. So, Yellow Dog Brewing, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Port Moody, which is just to the east of Vancouver and Burnaby in the southwestern part of the province of British Columbia. But the company was founded back in 2014 by husband and wife Mike and Melinda Coghill. So the couple lived in East Vancouver and they loved the beer scene there, but when they had their first child, they moved to Port Moody to start their family. And they felt that their new neighbourhood really could do with its own brewery because there was nothing there. They had to travel for quite a little bit to get their craft beer. But at the time, Mike was working in management for Best Buy, the big electronics chain, for those of you who don't know, and he was a little bit bored of this and just wanted a change. So this kind of prompted him to look actually starting his own brewery. So they drew up the business plan and started to investigate different premises and things like that, and they went with the name Yellow Dog for their project, and this was as an ode to their pet golden Labrador Chase. And one of the very first beers they produced was in fact called Chase My Tail Paleo, and that is still one of their core range beers today. But they found their premises on Murray Street, and they spent a few months renovating it before it opened to the public in 2014. And this brewery was the first in Port Murray, and also or Port Moody, I should say. I'm mixing that up because it's Murray Street, but yeah, it was the first in Port Moody, and the first on what is now known as Brewers Row, because quite a number of breweries have opened up in this area since then. But they brought in Liam Murphy, who had previously worked with Parallel 49 Brewing as their brewmaster, and they started off with a 25 hectolitre brew kit along with an 80 litre pilot kit, and of course this system has been scaled up considerably over the years. They've got a lot more fermentation capacity these days. They've got an on-site tasting room there, and one of the unique things about this location in Port Moody is that it has an enclosed kind of picnic area at the back of the brewery as well, and this has proved to be very popular with the locals. A lot of families go there and they stop off for a beer after work and things like that. But the Coghills also co-own Neighbourhood Brewing Company in Penticton, which is kind of south central or central southern, however you want to say it, British Columbia, and they own this along with John and Jessie Main, and they opened it together back in 2019. But apparently they had originally wanted to found Yellow Dog Brewing in Penticton because they'd visited the area as tourists and absolutely loved it, but at the time they couldn't find a suitable space. But this new brewery, Neighbourhood Brewing, was designed and built from scratch, and they started off with a 25 hectolitre brew kit as well, and of course things have gone very well for them too. But a few years later, in 2023, they also took over the home of Bad Tattoo Brewing in Penticton, where they'd actually brewed a number of their beers previously when they were starting to scale up their distribution and things. And this site was turned into a second branch of Yellow Dog Brewing, and this one is known as Dog Park. It, of course, has its on-site tap room and restaurant and things like that as well. But over the last few years, this brewery have continued to distribute their beers further afield and build up either sales and stuff like this, but they've also continued to develop different recipes and things like that too. And as of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 630 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Yellow Dog Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's all you need to know about Yellow Dog Brewing Company for just now. And again, I apologise for mixing up Murray and Moody. Those are both quite common surnames actually back in the motherland of Scotland, so that's probably the reason behind that. But yeah, like I said to you, this is one of Yellow Dog's core range beers. They had two different beers in Out of the Brew when I was over there, and I picked this one just because I kind of liked the name of it. They were both the same style though. I have to be careful with this can, of course, because it is open, but there you can see the Yellow Dog Brewing Company symbol there, and Chase the Golden Lab sitting on top. But there you can see Play Dead IPA. Tells you a little bit about the beer on the back side here as well. So it says, a delicious treat that will have you doing tricks. This carefully crafted hot potion provides a tropical fruit kick with a strong backbone that complements a pleasingly dry finish. A big beer that is very drinkable, but don't be fooled, it packs a punch. We love our dogs, our community, and of course great beer. Cheers, Yellow Dog beer. One of the other things that we should say about Yellow Dog Brewing is that they're big supporters of the BCSPCA, which is the British Columbia Society for the Protection of Cruelty to Animals. But yeah, we have a similar thing in Scotland, the SSPCA, and the abbreviation is basically the same. But yeah, 6.8% West Coast IPA. This one, for those of you that don't know the difference between West Coast and New England IPAs, West Coast IPAs tend to be more bitter and oily in their fruity character, sweeter in the malt base too. They use only barley malt for the most part in their malt base. New England IPAs use malted wheat and malted oats as well, which is what gives them their kind of cloudy, hazy sort of thing. They're hopped in a different way, so they're not quite as bitter, and then their fruity side of things is more kind of soft and juicy as well. You do have a thing these days as well that's simply called the American IPA, and it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it's got a wee bit of oat and wheat in it, but it has the higher bitterness of the West Coast IPAs as well. But yeah, 473 milliliter can, this one, which is one American pint. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. As I say, 6.8% West Coast IPA, one of the core range beers from Yellow Dog Brewing there. We'll get this guy poured out. There we are. So, that's that. Right. So, as you can see, this beer is poured kind of as you would have expected of a West Coast IPA. There's not quite as much head on this one, of course, though, because the can was open before. But before that head disappears, I think we can say we've got about 80% of the beer out and into the glass. You can see it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of light fawn coloured head there. If I bring that up to the camera, you can see some small foamier bubbles just at the just at the surface of the liquid there, and it gets a little bit more bumpy and things as you go further up, but you can see the colour of this one is really, really quite nice. Quite a rich amber to it, I would say. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer, right enough. You can see it is pretty clear, so it's obviously been filtered, but remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPAs. But yeah, going by the colour of this one, I would say this is going to be a little bit more kind of caramelly and oily. So when it comes to the West Coast IPAs, for me they can lean two ways. They can be a little bit more bready and biscuity, such as the Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing, or they can be a little bit more oily and caramelly, such as the Torpedo from Sierra Nevada. Those are the two kind of benchmarks for me, some of the first ones that I really encountered. But yeah, this one's got a bit more of an amber tinge to it, so I'm expecting something a little bit more kind of caramelly, I would say. But I think that's everything we can really say about the appearance of this beer, so I think we can go on and have a little look at the aroma and just see what it's all about. I'm just going to pause the camera for a minute just in case we lose anything from the file again, because I'm paranoid about that now. Just a second. Alright then guys, let's continue. Well, we're just about to check out the aroma of this beer then, so let's do it. Oh yeah, classic West Coast IPA, this one, but I will say it does have a little bit of an English IPA character to it as well. I wonder if this is using a wee bit of like English Maris Otter malt in it. There's just something very familiar about it. So I think it's a mix of American like Turo and English Maris Otter in here. But yeah, aroma wise, this is really nice. As I suspected, this was going to be a more oily and caramelly kind of West Coast IPA, this one. But it does smell really pretty nice. Proper old school this. I miss beers like this, in fact. But yeah, it's giving you everything you would want from an old school West Coast IPA. You've got that nice bready caramelly backbone, the big kind of deep dank green component, and you've also got that nice oily fruity character coming out of this one. This one comes across as being like quite old school in its nature, I would say. So yeah, if you've missed the West Coast IPAs, then this is maybe a good place to start. And as I say, it's one of their core range beers too, so it's probably been about for a wee while, probably back as far as 2014 or so when these guys were just getting started. But yeah, let's break that aroma down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of like a kind of fresh brown bready bread crust coming out of this one. That is the backbone. You can smell little hints of woodiness. There's little bits of kind of cracker and things in there as well. But for me, it's got a lot of, there's a good mix of like sweet, oily, wholemeal brown bread in there, and a little bit of sweeter white bread too. One of the things that makes me think there's American Turo in this is just because of how oily and sweet the bready character is. But above, you've got the brown bread in there, the white bread above it, and then yeah, you start to get the the kind of sweet brown sugary characters above that. So for me, you get a little bit of like toasty brown sugar sitting in there, so there's a little bit of that, yeah, toastiness coming out of the beer, and then you start to get the more oily brown sugars above that. So definitely, yeah, a little bit of toasty kind of caramel in there. Then you've got a more biscuity, like, you know, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of it too. But in the centre of the nose, it's all about that sweet caramelly character, and that is of course going to be the boozy part of the beer. But yeah, there's something about the way the breadiness is coming out as well in this one, and the way the biscuity character is, that is making me think, oh, maybe it's a little bit of Maris Otter. The other thing is that they could have used an English ale yeast or something like this. I don't think that's unheard of for West Coast IPAs over in North America either, so it could be an English yeast that's been used in this. But definitely some of the bready and biscuity character makes me think of English Maris Otter, but American Turo in this one, I'm pretty sure about that. But of course the Canadians have got a hell of a lot of arable land themselves, so they're probably producing a lot of malt or a lot of grain and then malting it themselves these days too. And remember, you know, malt can change from country to country and stuff like this too. But yeah, malty side of things in this beer is really nice. The yeasty character at the back of the nose is yeah, it's kind of brown bready and sort of crackery leaning, I would say. So yeah, good little bit of brown bready character, a little bit of crackery note in there for sure, and a wee bit of like woodiness. But yeah, more and more of that grainy, slightly earthy-ish note coming out of the beer too. But I don't know if there's really much else to say about the malty side of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of things then. So when it comes to IPAs and hopping, there are 3 different types of hoppings that you can do. You can do early addition hopping, which takes place usually within the first hour of the wort boil. That's going to give you a lot of bitterness and a big kind of deep dank green component in terms of flavour and aroma. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil, and that gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, but a very bright green component. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that is all about flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very kind of nice bright green component in there. But yeah, when it comes to West Coast IPAs, they use all 3 types of hopping, which is why they have that deeper, danker bitterness and things to them. But the New England IPAs tend to use late addition and dry hopping, which is of course why they're a bit softer and more juicy. You do get that nice kind of deep dankness out of this one, and I'm pretty sure it's old school sea hops that are in this one, in honesty, or something very familiar like Citra and Amarillo. It's, yeah, there's something very familiar about the hoppy part of this beer. So definitely nice little touch of earthiness in here for sure, a little bit of herbal character as well, maybe even a slight touch of woodiness. But yeah, you've got a wee bit of pine resin coming out of it, but not too much, I would say. Nice bright floral aromatic character. So yeah, big bright floral aromaticity, and also some nice kind of grassy, zesty notes as well. So yeah, the way that all of this goes together, I think, in terms of green component is really nice, and especially if you sugar it up, you get some, yeah, you do get that deeper, danker, piney resinous note out of it too. But yeah, all in all, green component is pretty nice. Let's round off then with a wee quick look at the fruit. So for me, like I say, there's something familiar about this. I think it's more old school hops that are in this, like maybe Simcoe, Citra, Mosaic, or it could be sea hops. So for me, I get a little bit of like a more passion fruity and mango-y character out of this one. Quite oily, of course, because we are talking about a more brown sugary leaning malt base in this case. More West Coast malt base, in other words. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that in there. So I think Citra, Simcoe and Mosaic in this one. I've just got a feeling about that. Old school. But maybe Amarillo, because the orange is quite zesty. But yeah, definitely juicy mango, softer passion fruit, tiny little bit of like apricot and stuff, but the more that I smell of this one, the more it starts leaning toward that orangey side of things, and there's a wee hint of like a kind of lemony lime character coming out of this beer too. So yeah, all in all, the aroma of this one, pretty old school, but yeah, pretty damn interesting for me. So yeah, gets a big thumbs up from me. Could sit and smell this all day, but yeah, I think it is about time to taste this one. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, I think we should have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. So this one is the Play Dead 6.8% West Coast IPA from Yellow Dog Brewing Company in Port Moody, British Columbia, over in Canada. My first beer from these guys. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh, yeah. That's pretty damn nice. We'll just get the rest of it out and into the glass there. Yeah, this is proper old school, this one. Little bit of a nostalgic beer for me actually, just with the types of flavours and things that you're getting out of this. I'm a huge fan of the West Coast IPA. North Park over in California, they're one of the breweries that are getting a lot of hype for their West Coast IPAs at the moment. And they are pretty damn good, I have to say. But yeah, this one is proper old school. The bitterness really builds into the aftertaste, and it gives you everything you would want from the style. You've got that nice bready backbone to it, the bit of sweet caramel, the kind of more bitter green component, and then the oily, fruity notes too. So yeah, the way that all of this goes together, I think, is really nice. So a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, let's do as we always do then, and we'll break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth and just see what we have. So let's start in the middle third of the palate then. So yeah, middle third of your palate, the backbone of the beer is that fresh, brown bready, sort of hedgehoggy roll there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of kind of woodiness in there, and that gets more prominent the further into the aftertaste that you go. Above the bread crust, you do get a little bit of a smattering of like Jacob's cream cracker and things out of it. But yeah, the way that all of that goes together is really very nice. And yeah, it does give you a wee bit of, there is like a little bit of earthiness and stuff coming out of this one, and that lingers into the aftertaste too. But yeah, the bread crust, the cracker, and the slightly woody note linger into the aftertaste. But yeah, above the kind of crackery layer, you get that wholemeal, more grainy, brown bready characters. You can feel that wholemeal, brown bready, grainy sort of note just lingering on top of it. So yeah, that nice kind of wholemeal, brown bready character that comes out of this one. Yeah, the way that goes together is really nice, and I do like that. It's quite sweet and quite oily, I have to say, but the graininess of it, again, it's making me think English Maris Otter. Maybe the Canadians have their own malt that's kind of similar to that. But yeah, certainly you do get that oily sweetness too, which makes me think of like American two-row malts. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on with this beer actually. But yeah, you've got that brown bready layer, then above that you've got a more white bready type layer coming out of it as well. And both of those kind of sit there, they linger into the aftertaste, but then above that you start to get the more kind of, brown sugary notes. So the first layer of the brown sugar is a more kind of toasty character brown sugar. Then above that you start to get the oily circle. So for me, that oily circle is a little bit more kind of like sweet caramel, boozy sweet caramel. This beer, in fairness, does actually show its boozy side a little bit more. You can feel a little touch of the alcohol to this beer. But then yeah, around the edge of that kind of oily sweet circle, you get the McVitie's digestive biscuit. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, then an oily circle in the middle of your palate, and the wee, the kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity notes coming out of it. So yeah, the way that middle third of the palate goes together in this one is what you'd expect of the style, but it is really quite nicely done. So yeah, let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. And the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, so you can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top of that, and then a wee bit of a more kind of bread crusty thing at the very top. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got a more bread crusty base to it, and it feels a little bit drier and more grainy. You've got the cracker sitting above that, then you have a wholemeal brown bready layer above that, which is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy and dry, of course. Then above that, you've got the white bready character, which feels a little bit lighter, taller, drier, and more airy. And then, of course, you get some of the toasty brown sugars just creeping over the top. And then it's all about the kind of yeasty side of things coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So for me, the yeasty side of this beer, at its centre, at its core, it's got a more kind of it's got a more sweet, oily, wholemeal brown bready character to it. Around the edge, it's a little bit more kind of grainy and things, I would say. And then you've got a more toasty, you've got a little bit more of a kind of toasty, a little bit of a more kind of toasty, bread crusty note around the very edge of it there. So oily brown bread in the middle, more of a grainy brown bread around that, and then a bread crusty character there. But definitely, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But malty and yeasty side of this beer are kind of what you would expect from this this particular beer style, but very nicely done. So on the hoppy side of things then, so green component in this one does have a good little bit of bitterness to it. I think it says on the front, 75 IBUs, which is kind of what you want. You want 80 or 90 IBUs on a West Coast IPA. But for me, green component, a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate there, which kind of blends in with the more kind of brown bready notes there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a more woody, herbally type character to it. But then as you come further forward along the sides of your palate, you can feel that more deep kind of pine resiny character coming out of it as well. But then as you reach the front corners of your palate, it's got more sort of floral aromaticity and a little bit of spice to it. But round the front curve of the tongue, definitely lighter, grassy, and more kind of zesty, if you like. So it has got that big green component that you want from the West Coast IPA style. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, just to kind of round off. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and then a wee bit of a bread crusty note at the very top there. But the base of that front third of your palate, you do have that kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there. You do have a little bit of there's a little bit of woodiness almost in there, but you've got Jacob's cream cracker above that, wholemeal brown bready note above it, then a white bready character, and then some of the kind of toasty brown sugars there. And then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at the fruity esters coming out of this one then. Fruity side of this one's pretty nice. So at the back of that front third of your palate then, I think there's a little touch of grapefruit in this one. Having tasted this now, I wonder if there's Cascade in this, because it has this, some of the flavours in here just make me really think of Cascade. So at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little touch of grapefruit there, but not too much. As you move further forward from that, you start to get like a big juicy, there's a kind of juicy but still oily mangoey character in there, some passion fruit as well. And as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, like it's a little bit of a more apricot-y type note there, but underneath that you have this kind of oily, like peary sultana type note, and it's the grapefruit and the pear and sultana type note that I very often associate with Cascade. Cascade is quite an easy one for me to pick up because of one of my local beers back in Scotland that I love. I've got a feeling there's Cascade in this, pretty sure about that. But I wouldn't be surprised, like a bit of Simcoe and a bit of Citra above that maybe. But as you move further forward and go into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you can feel just behind the very front tip of your tongue there's a little bit of a lemony limey character, but the majority of that front half of the front third of your tongue is kind of tangerine and orangey. It's got a little bit more of yeah, it's got a little bit more of a kind of mosaic or Amarillo type character to it, this one. It's a more of an old school West Coast IPA, this one. As I say, a little bit of a nostalgic beer for me, but I like that. I miss these beers, but still, very, very good West Coast IPA, this one, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So yeah, I don't know if we really need to say too much more about the flavour of this one. I think we've described it pretty well, in all honesty. But yeah, let's go on then and just round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, this one has a really nice kind of clean, oily mouthfeel, which is what you want from the West Coast IPA. I would describe this one as being kind of mid-bodied, leaning toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation does have a good degree of crispness to it, this one, and the water quality is obviously good. You know, you can feel the cleanliness in that, which I do quite like. And the bitterness in this one, we know it's 75 IBUs, it tells us that on the can, and that kind of builds up and lingers into the aftertaste for sure. The malty side of the beer, as we said, a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and a bit kind of sweeter and drier on top. Then you've got that nice kind of oily, fruity type character coming out of this one as well, which I think is really, really nice. So all of that gets a big thumbs up from me. Really nice example of a West Coast IPA, this one, and like I said, quite a nostalgic beer for me. So this is a nice addition to the channel, this one. Very cool to cover this brewery, and to yeah, very nice to cover this brewery and to try one of their core beers, especially a style that I enjoy quite a lot. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This is the Play Dead, a 6.8% West Coast IPA from Yellow Dog Brewing Company in Port Moody, British Columbia in Canada. This is definitely worth trying. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Yellow Dog Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Yellow Dog's social media, check out my Canadian beer tubing colleagues, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.